massive breaking news, and it couldn't come at, I guess, a better time. It's dark, by the way, the news. We have Trisha McLaughlin from DHS set and ready to respond to this. Let's walk through it. Kash Patel just posted that the ICE shooting yesterday was a copycat of Charlie Kirk. The perpetrator of the ICE shooting yesterday, the deadly ICE shooting yesterday, by a far left-wing Marxist radical, conducted multiple searches of ballistics and the Charlie Kirk shot video. He witnessed this video. He searched for apps that tracked the presence of ICE agents. We talked about those a lot. He had a handwritten note recovered that said, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror. Is there a sniper with rounds on the roof? Further accumulated evidence at this point indicates high degree of pre-attack planning. Very important. This was a copycat attack on the basis of the Charlie Kirk assassination, something that we suspected at the time. Joining us now to comment live is Trisha McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary at the Department of Homeland Security. Let's rock and roll. A horrifying new revelation, Trisha. The floor is yours. Perhaps you knew this yesterday, but your reaction to this?
Benny, incredibly disturbing. I mean, we saw those shell casings from those bullets with the anti-ICE messages, so the motive was becoming increasingly clear. And then to hear about the handwritten notes where he's wishing for terror and to bring terror to ICE agents, that this does look like it was directly inspired by your friend and so many people's hero, Charlie Kirk, his cold-blooded murder. The fact that this individual, this monstrous individual, began firing from a rooftop adjacent to our ICE facility in Dallas. He was showering bullets down at ICE vehicles, which had the 3 detainees in the vehicles. That is where they were shot. One, of course, is now deceased, and 2 of which are in critical condition. And we do pray for those individuals and for their families. And we pray for our law enforcement. Bennu, there's another press conference happening later today in Dallas at 1:30 p.m. So I think we'll get some more information. Some more footage will come out of this. But as we learn more and more about this murder, I think that the motivation will be incredibly clear.
Yes. Okay. So we have the bullet casings from yesterday. You can see them here. It says anti-ICE on the actual shell casings. It doesn't leave much to the imagination there for what the intention was. However, there is a pretty loud vocal minority of conspiracy theorists on the left that believe that either your department wrote that on the bullets or is trying to manipulate this in order to come after them. And I'd like to get your response to that conspiracy theory.
It's disgusting, and it's also just giving an excuse to a lunatic and to these politicians who are cranking up the rhetoric and putting our law enforcement in danger. I've also seen similar conspiracies online that this individual was targeting those detainees. As I mentioned before, more footage is going to be coming out to show that the detainees were in these ICE vehicles, but that the shooter wouldn't have been able to see that anyone was in that vehicle because of the tinted glass windows. As well, he was just spraying indiscriminately these law enforcement buildings. I'm sure some of your viewers saw the images come out yesterday. These are processing facilities. These are not detention centers. This is where individuals come in. Our law enforcement comes in to process people, to work day in and day out. And I mean, let's look at the politicians, their rhetoric, Benny. We've been saying since the start of this administration that our law enforcement was seeing an unprecedented rise in assaults against them. Just this weekend, we saw Gavin Newsom and his team give a very menacing, threatening post about Secretary Noem. And then just an hour later, he unveils this unconstitutional law to ban our law enforcement from wearing masks to protect themselves from monsters like this and to be able to hide themselves so that their families are not doxxed online, where their spouses work, where their children go to school. That is being put out on the dark web so that these criminals and these monsters can go after them. Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, the Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, AOC, Mayor Wu, you name it, have all likened law enforcement to the Gestapo, to the Nazis, even Jasmine Crockett. I'm sure you've covered this before, her likening them to a slave patrol. when you invoke this kind of rhetoric, you can expect that some crazy lunatic like this guy is going to take matters into their own hands.
And then there is a protection mechanism. And this is what made me so enraged after they killed my friend.
Yeah.
There is a protection mechanism where the likes of Jimmy Kimmel say this: not only can you go and kill Charlie Kirk, a generational leader of the MAGA movement, but we will blame MAGA for that killing instead of you and your transgender furry boyfriend and all the left-wing iconography that you are leaving. I mean, the killers are literally screaming from the rooftops that I am of the left. And this is, of course, in the vein of so many other instances of left-wing violence over just the past 30 days. It's hard to really count them all. We will. But this is the particular sin of Jimmy Kimmel, which is that they are using taxpayer-funded FCC licensured networks in order to cover for these murders, Trisha. This is the thing that I find indefensible, but also morally indefensible, is that they're saying we'll protect you. If you're a left-winger and you go out and you target a Trump supporter, we'll not only protect you by not talking about the left and blaming our side, we will blame MAGA for it. And you saw this incident actually repeated yesterday, where when a left-winger writes anti-ICE messaging on their bullets, there's a huge consortium of left-wing voices that say it's actually you. It's Homeland Security. Doctoring evidence. They're blaming the Trump administration for their own violence. And I don't mean to monologue here, but it's what makes me insane right now, because you can't solve a problem if you can't be honest about it. You can't unite over a lie, and you can't unite with people who want you dead.
No, absolutely. It's reprehensible. They're creating excuses for these lunatics. And this was going to happen time and time again. And Benny, I guarantee after this press conference, and when we're finding out more information on this maniac, as you said, this Marxist likely, that the left wing is going to stop covering this, because I think that they were primarily covering this violence against our law enforcement because they did think that the target was detainees. And I think that we're going to have to force feed them. We're going to have to force them to cover this, because if not, they won't. And we're going to continue to see bloodshed in this country.
So then, I mean, it is interesting. The Facebook profile of the shooter was found almost instantly yesterday. Yeah. And it included like a Soviet hammer and sickle, yeah, and Soviet iconography and messaging. Do you have any further information on who this individual was and what the political motivations are? It seems to be, I mean, staring us right in the face that this is a radicalized communist. His family has obviously left-wing views. You can find the profiles of his other family members, long rap sheets, and so on. Here's the Facebook profile. Again, Marxist iconography. Is this a Marxist attack? Is this an Antifa attack? Like, what is this?
I think that's something we're certainly looking into with Homeland Security investigators, as well as with the FBI. I don't want to get too far ahead of them, as this is an active and ongoing investigation, but more and more evidence is coming out, and this is increasingly looking like political violence, despite what we're hearing from the mainstream media. We've heard CNN castigating Vice President Vance. They're saying he's getting way too ahead of it by blaming political rhetoric. They're saying that this isn't political violence. Well, of course, those bullet casings tell a story themselves, and that this is not an individual who's supportive of our law enforcement. When not only do you take the time to etch on these bullets anti-ICE messaging, you go and spray and shoot out an ICE facility.
Trisha, I'm tired of this happening, and I'm sure you are too. You knew Charlie. You obviously know President Trump very well. He also took a bullet to the head. These attacks on ICE are happening constantly, including at the same Dallas facility, where there were a dozen Antifa members that were rounded up for a coordinated attack. This is just one of, it must be hundreds of attacks now on ICE agents or ICE facilities throughout the land. That comes on the heels of course, also a transgender shooting in Minneapolis, targeted children praying in church. Yeah. So it's becoming quite obvious that there is a massive trend here. We actually we just have handy data printed out here about left-wing violence versus what is considered right-wing violence, if properly adjudicated and classified. And there really isn't any comparison. So given the fact that you are in the Department of Homeland Security, at what point or what must happen for our homeland to be secure against left-wing extremist terroristic violence?
Benny, it's a good question. And what I do fear for the public, for the American public, is that people are becoming numb to this violence. How was it just over a year ago that we saw a former president and a top presidential candidate be shot? And this is still going on. Charlie, just a week ago, 2 weeks ago almost, I guess 2 weeks to the day.
Exactly.
And this is just, what's next? What can you imagine, Benny, knowing your words directly contribute to violence, contribute to bloodshed, and continuing to say them? When do you people look in the mirror and say, enough's enough? I'm not going to just be saying off the wall things for fundraising dollars or for viral clicks or to get the next MSNBC hit, that there's something more to humanity than this.
Okay, you're right about the words, and that's going to be someone's soul searching, right? And I guess we could have that conversation. I know that you yourself are a believer, and I think there's a real spiritual element to this. Yeah. But there's also Romans 13, which is that a properly instituted Christian government wields the sword for the terror of evil men. And what are we going to see from this administration when it comes to ensuring that these left-wing terror networks, either from a funding perspective, which I think is critically important, or from an organizing perspective, that the kind of resources that are constantly deployed against somebody wearing a red MAGA hat, right, that just wants to wave an American flag, that those resources perhaps are deployed instead against those who are threatening the lives and taking the lives of generational leaders like Charlie Kirk.
You're absolutely correct. And I think that this administration has a lot of work to do in this space. I think we need to be working with the Department of Justice. I know Secretary Noem is doing just that. And we also need to work with Congress. How can we be preventing this kind of thing from ever happening again? And we haven't gotten to that answer. I mean, something that Charlie he saw this coming. I remember the last show I was on with him, Brandon Johnson was again likening our law enforcement to the Gestapo, to the Nazis, and virtually encouraging violence against them. And Charlie said, when is enough enough? You guys got to press charges against him. And that's something I think Secretary Noem, he texted her that. She's spoken about that before. And this is something that this administration is taking seriously, and we got to get answers on.
Yeah. Okay. So that's very interesting. Charlie obviously leaving us with some pretty important messaging. Stephen Miller, who I know, of course, works very closely with your department, said that the last thing that Charlie told him was we must get left-wing violence under control. Yeah. And so it's, obviously a final message after left-wing violence then took Charlie's life. And then after that, there wasn't a time of pausing and reflecting. There was just further violence. There was a bomb placed on a Fox News van. There was an ABC news station that was shot up by a far leftist. More leftists were arrested for desecrating Charlie Kirk memorials and assaulting people who were at vigils. Hundreds of thousands of leftists celebrated Charlie Kirk's murder online. It's a real crisis. It's a real darkness versus light crisis.
It really is. And I do have to point out as well what's happening with these riots across sanctuary cities across the country, whether it be Los Angeles, Portland, or Chicago. We're seeing law enforcement being hurt there. We just saw out of Chicago, a law enforcement officer is in severe condition after an illegal alien tried to evade arrest, and he was being dragged through the streets of Chicago. It's disturbing what's going on. And I think that something that's also important is we don't let it slow us down. We don't let it deter us. We have 151,000 applications to join ICE law enforcement. That's despite the danger. That's despite the smears of the left. And we're going to keep going. We're going to hire more ICE law enforcement. We're going to flood the zone. And we're going to make America's community safer, as President Trump, his mandate was, the American people's mandate, and exactly what Charlie would have wanted.
Yes, that is precisely correct. Do you view this as like organized Bolshevik violence? Do you view this as some type of like neo-Marxist violence that is organized throughout the nation?
We do. And we're seeing these protests, or really these riots, are increasingly highly organized. People are being bussed in, not even from the state or city of that jurisdiction.
Wow. We'd love to see an attack on the funding mechanisms for this, because these people don't have jobs. They don't have the capacity to do this themselves. That's right. Yeah. This is being professionally organized. And that's how you actually, cripple the organization. Yes. Okay, so you talked about recruitment numbers. ICE has, without a doubt, the best recruitment campaigns and some of the best viral campaigns of all time. The Pokemon campaign was really something that dropped this week. If we could just do a tone change here, it's been really spectacular. But I got to say, my favorite was Theo Von and the heard you got deported, dude. Bye. But then Theo Von didn't like it, which is crazy. So what's up with that?
I haven't talked to Theo about it specifically or personally, so I know he didn't like it. It's gotten quite a bit of coverage, but this is what we need to be doing, whether it be Pokemon or Theo Von. We need to be engaging with young people and people who are disaffiliated from politics. Don't watch the news. Don't watch CNN. Don't regularly talk about politics. We need to be reaching out to them directly where they are, and so that they're getting our message. They know what we're doing. They're not believing the lies they constantly hear about ICE, but they're actually seeing who we're getting off of these streets. And that's why we did the Pokemon lists out. Child predators, MS-13 gang members, murders, really horrendous individuals that we've gotten off of America's streets who have just been walking around with impunity for the last year under President Biden.
So a message in closing here to those on the left, and obviously you're doing God's work with deporting so many of these criminals, but those on the left who seem to be actively organizing now confirmed copycat attacks on you and your agents. And how will you stop this? Because nobody wants to see more of this. What is your message to that extremist, Marxist, left-wing, terroristic organization that continues these attacks?
We won't stop. We won't be deterred. We will find you, and you will be arrested, and we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. It's unacceptable. This political violence and the culture in this country has to stop. And this administration under President Trump, we're going to find a solution. The American people can rest assured of that.
Yeah, Antifa being designated as a terrorist organization is a good first start. I'm sure that means a lot of extra work for you, but a good first start.
It's an honor to do it. It is.
Wonderful to hear it. Trisha McLaughlin is obviously the one that you should follow here. She's got nearly 100,000 subscribers, and God, Family, Country right up there in the top of the bio, and that's exactly where we should be. Are you ready to cowboy up, she says here on X. And I got to tell you what, man, that is exactly what Trisha's done at DHS, and it's an honor to have you, Trisha.
It's an honor to join you. Thank you, Penny. God bless you.
Godspeed.